Welcome to Grandfather Home for Children. I would like to tell you a story. The story I'm about to share isn't your average story, though. It's a story that spans almost 100 years. It's a story of courage, a story of strength, and most importantly, it's a story about faith. The story begins in 1914, and the setting is the mountains of North Carolina, where a young reverend named Edgar Tufts, a Presbyterian minister, converted a farmhouse belonging to Lees McRae Institute into an orphanage for homeless children. But he needed help, so he sent up prayers asking for help, and two people answered the call. Mr. and Mrs. J.W. Holcomb, also known as John and Maddie, traveled by horseback from Yancey County, North Carolina, to Banner Elk to be the first house parents at what was then called Grandfather Orphans Home. In May of that year, Grandfather Orphans Home takes in their first child.
While I was there, I learned to sew, patch, crochet, and tat, things that have given me pleasure all my life. When I had some hard experiences in later life, especially during the Depression, I found all kinds of inner strength and courage. I remembered those Bible passages. See what Grandfather Home gave me? Hattie Bond, 1915.
The first children at the home were all girls, because the farmhouse wasn't considered suitable to accommodate both genders under a strict 1914 idea of separation. But within a year, Mr. Holcomb and volunteers added a new section to the house, and a separate outbuilding was built to accommodate for the brothers of the girls that were beginning to join the home's family. By 1917, Greer Cottage was up and running, and soon the home was filled with children. 16 children were cared for, and due to the times, and grandfather being a working farm, the children pitched in to take on chores that included kitchen work inside and tapping sugar maple trees outside. At the start of the 20s, the home's population reached 51 children, and by 1922, the baby cottage was finished after a fundraising effort that included private donations from local family. Due to their generosity, the home was able to give little Kathleen Taylor and many others just like her a home. In 1923, Edgar Tufts, founder of Lees McRae, Grace Hospital, and Grandfather Orphanages, dies at the age of 52 after decades of inspired leadership. The following year, though, the Edgar Tufts Memorial Association was formed, with its board overseeing all three enterprises. If you've been around Grandfather Home at all, you've heard the phrase, "the child now before us." And you may be asking yourself, where does this come from? Well, the phrase began from the Holston Presbytery meeting on April 4th, 1924. The phrase was originally known as "the child immediately before us," and was made known by Reverend Samuel Hay, the chairman of the Grandfather Orphanage Committee.
In the presence of childhood unprotected and unprovided for, all other claims than that of the child immediately before us must stand alone. Reverend Samuel Hay, 1924.
In 1925, Edgar Tufts' son, Edgar Hall Tuft, became head of the Association of Lees McRae Institute and of the orphanage, and oversaw construction of many of the stone buildings on the campus. These beautiful stone buildings still exist on the campus today, making his father's dream of education, healing, and community a reality. In 1931, Jane Russell became superintendent, serving for 10 years, and during that time, the campus continued to grow. Wildcat Lake was established and originally created because of drought, and some 80 years ago prior, there was a simple, low-level, hand-hewn log dam that was constructed across what was then Wildcat Creek. That small dam was the project of Grandfather Home for Children and Lees McRae College founder Edgar Tufts. The original dam was built to provide hydroelectricity to the local rural areas in 1932. However, the land was so parched that there was not enough water to power the plant. Sensing a great need for advancement in technology and desperate to sustain the community, Tuft's son Edgar Hall Tuft petitioned to have a larger dam constructed that would hold much more water. In 1938, the Adelaide Douglas Cottage was finished and was established for a new home for 18 boys. Currently, this cottage is still in use and houses teen-aged females. In 1940, the Cannon Administration Building was dedicated, a crowning achievement of Edgar H. Tuft's life. However, shortly after in 1942, beloved humanitarian and child advocate Edgar Hall Tufts dies in his early 40s. In 1941, Jane Russell steps down as superintendent, and Anne Ruth Bryant began to function in the head position on an interim basis until the board found a suitable replacement for the position. During this time, a new president of the ETMA was established, Dr. W.C. Tate, and he found the need for Grandfather Home to produce its own budget, and Miss Anne was instrumental in formulating one. And in 1943, Miss Anne produced a surplus of $6,158.80. And however, no formal vote was taken to employ Anne Bryant as the superintendent, no other mention of a suitable replacement was made. And Anne Bryant remained in the head position until 1967. And for the length of her stint as leader, there were no deficits in the budget ever recorded. In 1952, the much-admired grandfather superintendent, Anne Bryant, reports that 50% of the children are from broken homes. In 1957, Grandfather Home for Children was incorporated separately with an independent board of trustees, while retaining its roots with a Presbyterian church. In 1958, the Anne Bryant Recreation Building was finished and named in Anne's honor through the generosity of Marion Cannon Hayes. In 1963, Harris Cottage was completed and named for the Johnson City boy who died in his youth. By 1971, Hickory Cottage was finished, and its name is a reflection of the gifts of those residents of Hickory, North Carolina, wanting to make a difference in the lives of children. From 1972 through 1980, Meredith White serves as director in a time when Grandfather's therapeutic program shifts to helping children with complex needs. The home's focus begins to reflect a new professionalism. And by 1983, Jim Swincola becomes executive director. Through the 80s, children who suffered from abuse define more than ever, and what was now called the child immediately before us is now the child now before us. Also, family clarification emerges with a goal of healing both children and their families. In 1990, Grandfather Home receives a 4-year accreditation from the Council of Accreditation of Services to Family and Children, a level of excellence it would continue to pursue and achieve. In 1996, the new Nell Barnhart classrooms and the Greer Keener Family Support Center are built. Also, Grandfather Academy opens the next year as one of the original North Carolina charter schools. In 2002, Grandfather embraces a continuum of care as an overall direction, establishing community offices beginning in Asheville. With the initiative, the institution shapes itself to meet the evolving needs of the children and the young adults it seeks to serve. In 2006, Grandfather Home is named recipient of the 10th Annual Komen Award, a national tribute which recognizes outstanding achievements in improving the quality of healthcare. In 2010, Grandfather opens a new level of care to address the growing needs of the child now before us. A locked PRTF, or known as a Psychiatric Residential Treatment Facility, was built to address this need, and Campbell Cottage was born. In 2012, Aging Out becomes the focus of a new initiative called Stand By Me, to better serve young adults who can easily be misguided by society in their late teens. Currently, Grandfather Home for Children is a Christian ministry providing love and healing for more than 500 children each year. The children in our care have experienced deep hurt from unimaginable abuse, neglect, and sometimes both. On our beautiful historic campus in Banner Elk, North Carolina, generations of children have been given a warm and comfortable bed with nurturing caregivers who help them with much-needed direction. Today, the campus has hosted residential care programs and serves as the hub for several carefully targeted services stretching from the Carolina Mountains west of Asheville to the sands east of Raleigh. Staff work with our children to resolve the hurt and to provide acceptance, hope, and new life skills to overcome the challenges they face. We strive to mend families whenever possible, and we involve parents in treatment initiatives. If a child cannot be reunited with his or her biological family, we work to place the child with a trained foster family and eventually an adoptive family. We understand a loving family environment is crucial for the children to develop and to thrive, so we provide support to all of our foster and adoptive families so they can have resources needed to nurture their children. 2014. Grandfather enters its second century of work serving children and families. And over the decades, Grandfather Home has refocused its ministry to provide help and changing for the population of children in need. However, our mission will never change. For over the past 100 years, we have and will always strive to best help and provide support for the child now before us.